Judicial Watch's team went down to Guatemala to investigate the Caravan. Chris Farrell and Irene Garcia, who is one of our steadfast reporters in our Corruption Chronicles blog, were down there investigating the Caravan, meeting with senior government officials, including the president of Guatemala, the defense minister, the foreign intelligence minister. And so we've been trying to alert you as to what the facts are, that according to Guatemalan authorities, it was highly organized. The Caravan consisted of too many criminals, gangbangers, and people like that. And so the leftist media wants no part of that information. You saw most recently this week developments showing that the next wave of caravans, or caravan, whatever you want to call it, included attacks on the Mexican police at the Guatemala border. The U.S. ambassador, or the ambassador from Mexico to the United States, is quoted today as saying the caravan includes people who are violent. And so they're very much concerned about the threat to the public safety. Not only should we be concerned, but they're concerned about it in Mexico because their police are being attacked as well. Now, Judicial Watch has been attacked for highlighting this caravan, the organization, the organizing of it, facts about it. The media is out there mischaracterizing what we said, suggesting that because we're criticizing George Soros by mentioning the fact he's very much involved with State Department funding and such, and the Guatemalans are concerned about it. So this is reporting about what the Guatemalans are concerned about, but the left has decided that any criticism of George Soros is anti-Semitic, which is an outrageous smear on Judicial Watch and on other conservatives who are also being attacked for criticizing George Soros. Now, I don't know if George Soros is specifically funding the caravans or his organizations are specifically involved, but I can tell you the Guatemalans are investigating as what's going on there. And we do know it's organized. The question is, how do we figure out who's behind the organizations? Now, the Guatemalans are investigating it, and I suggest the United States investigate it as well. The Justice Department should be investigating who's behind this dangerous and massive human trafficking operation. Judicial Watch exposed how the Guatemalan authorities rescued 7 children from human traffickers in one of the caravans heading our way. 7 children being trafficked up into the United States. As we highlighted, there are violent gangbangers in the caravan as well. According to Guatemalan authorities, MS-13, that group, is likely to be part of the caravan based on our reporting. So this is a dangerous situation. And the president is responding really quite strongly, comparatively speaking, to prior presidents who have been terribly weak on matters of border security. He's sending down initially 5,000 military personnel to provide support at the border. He's potentially sending down as many as 15,000 military personnel. He's talking about reforming Asylum, the process, because that's the process they're trying to take advantage of. What happens is, if you come to the border and you're an illegal alien, you just have to say that you have a credible fear under asylum law of being returned back to your country and suffering some type of violence or attack or something like that, and we have to process you under the law. And the problem is we don't have enough capacity to process asylum claims quickly, so they can only be detained for so long before they have to be released. And once they're released, all bets are off. They're free and clear. So that's the system that's being assaulted and gamed by this massive wave of the massive caravan that's coming up. And it's been being gamed for years. It began during the Obama administration. It's continued and intensified recently during the Trump administration. I mean, we see the news about the caravan that's coming, but in the meantime, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people every day who are gaming the system at the border. And the president's suggested there's going to be reform there. I'm not quite sure what he's planning. My guess is, based on what the law would allow, is the Justice Department, this is a Justice Department issue, so they've got to get administrative law judges down on the border to quickly adjudicate these asylum claims and then kick those who are meritlessly asking for them out of the country. But there hasn't been enough infrastructure down there to do this, and I hope it changes. And certainly we need to increase the capacity to detain those who await their asylum claim adjudications. Frankly, the way it ought to happen is they can't come to the border through another country to ask for asylum claims if there's a third country they're passing through where they're safe. So pretending that you need an asylum claim because you're from Honduras, and then you go through Guatemala and then Mexico and then ask the United States, that obviously doesn't make much sense, does it? They can ask for asylum claims at the consulate in Guatemala, wait in Guatemala, if Guatemala will let them wait there. They can ask for asylum claims, make asylum claims at the consulates in Mexico, and they can wait there. I mean, that ought to be the rule. And to the degree there's an international law or international treaty that the United States has agreed to that has put us in this position, in theory, the international treaty for refugees and these types of asylum claims, it's designed to help people who truly face severe persecution. Not someone fleeing generalized issues of violence and poverty in their home countries. That's not what asylum was about. For instance, there's a Pakistani woman who was just exonerated by the Supreme Court of Pakistan for supposedly slandering the Prophet Muhammad, and she was facing hanging. She's been on the death row of Pakistan for 8 years, and the Supreme Court of Pakistan just said that the proceeding against her has to stop, and she's going to be let go, I think. Now, she could be easily killed once she's let out of prison. It's that sort of person that our asylum laws are designed to protect. Get her here to the United States so she's not killed by Islamists in Pakistan trying to enforce this Sharia prohibition against slandering the Prophet. That's what asylum claims are for. They're not for millions of Central Americans who don't like the economic conditions or social conditions in which they live. I mean, that's just not what it's for. And the idea that they're not organized is baloney. As I just tweeted, these caravans are about as organic as a plastic straw. They are organized. In fact, it's just announced today, I think the claim was filed yesterday, that members of the caravan are suing in the District of Columbia. So they're in Mexico, traveling on foot. They're destitute, right? But magically, they are now in federal court demanding that the Trump administration be stopped from enforcing our border laws and our asylum laws. And yet the left would tell you that it's completely organic and, you know, these are just people on their own fleeing violence and poverty. And of course, Judicial Watch has already told you that a lot of them are criminals. Too many of them are criminals. They're mostly men and women, I mean women and children involved in the caravan, to the degree they're not being trafficked, are in the small minority. Obviously, if it were women and children traveling up through Mexico, that'd be something easy to deal with, both in humanitarian, in terms of the law, and in terms of humanitarian help for them either in Guatemala or Mexico. The caravans are mostly men. And we've been warned by Guatemalan officials about the criminal nature of a lot of the men in the caravan. We've been warned by Mexican officials about the criminal nature of those in the caravan. The Mexican ambassador said that he said they were armed with guns and Molotov cocktails. No, excuse me, Reuters reported that. Guns and Molotov cocktails at the border of Mexico. So I hope the president takes strong action, and I suggested in an op-ed in The Hill this week, I encourage you to read it, that he send troops to interdict the caravan. Ask Mexico, you need help interdicting it? We'll send the troops to help you. Ask Guatemala, you need help with interdiction issues? We'll send the troops to help you. And the troops don't necessarily have to be in the front lines of the caravan, but we can provide logistical support to both Mexico and Guatemala I have a feeling Guatemala would be more welcoming than the anti-American politicians running Mexico, so that the proper authorities in both countries can do their jobs, assuming they want to do their jobs, and stop these caravans from assaulting our borders. The president also talked this week about, he was asked about the issue of birthright citizenship. I guess Axios News, A-X-I-O-S, in an interview with President Trump, asked him about this idea that I guess Axios had learned about, that the Trump administration was considering executive action enforcing the 14th Amendment, which prohibits, according to President Trump's reading of the 14th Amendment, the children of illegal aliens being treated as citizens, because under current interpretation of the Constitution, not by Congress, not by the Supreme Court, but by the executive branch, the children of illegal aliens are treated as citizens. Now, the idea that anyone would challenge that is sent the left into the stratosphere. Even Speaker Ryan, the open borders amnesty politician who's the Speaker of the House for the Republicans, said the president can't do this by executive order. Well, first of all, we don't know what the executive order is going to be, so we don't know whether the president can do it by executive order. But as I suggested to you, the executive branch has interpreted the Constitution to allow citizenship to be granted to illegal aliens. And I think if the executive branch is interpreting the Constitution that way, they can change their interpretation to the more correct view that those who are the children of illegal aliens, even though they're born here in the United States, aren't United States citizens. I mean, that can't be. Do you think the founders or the writers of the 14th Amendment would have agreed with the notion that you can have what they call birth tourists coming here to the United States, having children, getting citizenship for the children and going back home? 36,000 births a year, the last stat I saw. Now, the left doesn't want you to know the truth about what the 14th Amendment says, because when they quote the 14th Amendment, they don't actually quote it as in its entirety. And they say the Supreme Court interpreted it to make sure that the children of illegal aliens are granted citizenship. No, the Supreme Court hasn't interpreted the clause that way. At best, a Supreme Court decision from the late 1800s interpreted the clause to allow the children of legal foreign residents to gain citizenship. And arguably that interpretation is wrong. But no Supreme Court decision has interpreted that the children of illegal aliens should be granted citizenship under the 14th Amendment. Why? Because I suspect, and this is what the left doesn't want you to know, it's because the 14th Amendment doesn't require that. The 14th Amendment reads, and I have here my Judicial Watch copy of the Constitution of the United States of America. You should go ahead and get a copy. They're online, you read it. Read the Constitution every once in a while. Remember what is the governing document that our government's supposed to follow. Because the politicians don't want you to know about it. Because the gig is up if Americans understand what the Constitution's about and they realize how out of step our current government is with it. And thankfully, the president is raising questions about this. This is what the relevant clause of the 14th Amendment says. Get on my disguise here, as I say. 1868. The 14th Amendment, by the way, was passed to deal with the problem of enslaved Americans. There was a dispute as to their citizenship status. The 14th Amendment settled that dispute. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So when the left reads you the 14th Amendment, and I've seen this online, critics of President Trump's interpretation say all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. They leave out the portion that says, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean? Are the children of illegal aliens subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the United States, the way the writers of the 14th Amendment understood it? Of course not. The children of a foreign diplomat aren't subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The children of ambassadors aren't subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. This was designed to make sure that slaves born in America were treated as citizens. That's all. It wasn't designed to allow illegal aliens to come into the country illegally, have children, and get citizenship for their children. Of course that can't be the law. It's the way the executive branch has been interpreting the law recently, but it's not supported by the Constitution. It's not supported by the Constitution at all. Subject to the jurisdiction of the United States means that if you're here, it means you owe allegiance to this country and no other. An illegal alien or an alien here in the United States is not subject to the jurisdiction fully of the United States. They can't be drafted. Maybe they can be drafted, but they can't be called onto juries, and other things that other benefits that citizens get. I tell you what, if the clause is read the way the left and the open borders crowd wants us to read it, why have any borders at all? Why even have citizenship status? I mean, we have aliens in Mexico traveling in the United States who are demanding the protection of the Constitution while they're in Mexico. They want to make sure they can get into the United States illegally or enter it the way they want. Under that theory of the law, I can imagine why you have a lot of people saying subject to the jurisdiction of the United States means that illegal aliens can have children and have citizenship automatically granted to them. Now, I know that would be a big change in terms of the administrative state, but I think it's a discussion well worth having. Now, there could be, and to be fair, there are people who think that President Trump is wrong, and they honestly think he's wrong. They've evaluated the history, they don't agree with him, they look at that Supreme Court decision I've talked about, they think that decision is guiding. And you can have a reasonable dispute about this. But you know, we elect politicians to interpret and apply the law. The president can interpret and apply the law. The courts may intervene, however properly or improperly. But the idea that the Constitution of the United States requires us to grant citizenship to birth tourists, the children of birth tourists, to me is just absurd. So I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know what the executive order is going to be. Maybe his executive order is unconstitutional. Maybe it's an overreach. I don't know. But to say he can't do it by executive order is just people just being very nervous. And the overreaction to this, saying how outrageous it isn't outrageous. I just read to you the 14th Amendment. You can go look up online the debates about this. And there's a reasoned argument behind President Trump's concerns. A perfectly reasonable argument. So this is something that the left hates to discuss. They hate to discuss the premises of open borders, the attraction of flawed interpretations of U.S. law that brings more illegal immigration to the United States. You know what else they hate to discuss? The Constitution of the United States. So what I love about this debate, no matter how it turns out, we are talking about the Constitution and whether the government should follow the Constitution and how it's interpreting the Constitution. And that's a debate that is so rarely held in this town, you would think there was no Constitution. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm glad the president is raising it.